Hello and welcome to The Connection Compass. I am your host, Andrea Louise Evans. To find out more about my work, please visit andrealevans.com. In today's episode, I talked to David Brown, coach at Potentiality Coaching and co-founder of the Facebook group Institute of Sovereign Leadership. At 7 years old, David's life changed. One moment, his world felt safe, warm and familiar, and then it didn't. When trauma hits that young, it doesn't just hurt, it disconnects, not only from the self, but from others and from the very sense of belonging we all need. This episode is a journey of healing, from that early rupture to the slow, often unforeseen path of reconnection, of learning to feel again, to trust, to come home to yourself after being lost for so long. Healing isn't just about fixing what was broke, it's about remembering what was whole to begin with. Welcome, David. Hi, welcome to The Connection Compass. It's really lovely that you're here. We spoke a few weeks ago now, and we've come together again to record the podcast. Are you well?
Thank you very much. Yeah, I am very, very well. I'm very excited for what we're going to explore today, and thank you for the invitation.
So, I know we've had a chat before and we know what we're going to talk about today roughly, but why has it been really important for you to share this story?
Great first question. I think human stories are really important and really inspiring, and that's not to say that I think my my story is inspiring, although I'm sure some people might find it that way. But if you think back to throughout human history, we've sat around campfires and we've told stories, and stories are the things that endear us to each other and allow us to really relate someone else's story to our experience. And it creates this sense of connection, and it creates this sense of empathy and compassion and love and respect, and all of these wonderful human qualities that kind of get stirred up when we tell stories. And whilst there are lots of stories, I'm sure there are lots and lots of stories that are like mine, the core thing of it around the impact that it had on my body and the mind-body connection that I spoke about before, that I've not really heard anybody talk about often. So I'm sure there are lots of people out there that have those sorts of experiences. Or, for many, many years, I didn't make the connection. It was only until maybe 40 years after the event that I was like, oh, right, okay, I get it now. I can see how all the bits of the jigsaw just kind of went, and it just all fitted. So sometimes having a story, another beautiful thing about stories is that they can get under the radar of people's psychological defenses, and there's a way in which a story can deeply resonate with you, like in your soul or in your heart or in your gut, that your head just misses completely because it's looking for the linear, logical, rational explanation for things. But there's something in a story often where you go, that's really true, and that really resonates. As many opportunities as I can, I try and share the stories that I've got for all of those reasons.
I'm so with you, and our stories show the depth of who we truly are. So beyond what people can see on the surface, I feel like we live in a very surface driven society at the moment, and we really need to see those deeper parts of us and bring them out in story so that we can make those connections, that we start to see each other as we truly are, or have been, how our journeys have shaped us, certainly.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I think it's Joseph Campbell. He's been dead for a few years now, but some of his work, he was talking about coming to the end, the period where we're coming to the end of the old stories, where the old stories are really relevant and that they resonate. And that we're in this period where there aren't that many stories for us to grow into.
Yeah.
And so one of the invitations that I think Joseph Campbell offers is this opportunity to create your own stories and to
Yeah.
create your own myths, and to, not in the sense of a myth being some secret mystical thing, but this myth of like the creation story and why I am the person that I am, why all of the sum total of all of the events and all of the experiences that I've had in the past, all of all this moment. I just think that that's a marvelous thing.
Yeah. So then, where does your story that we're going to share today start?
Well, it starts. So what? Okay, let me start from a different place. So I would say that my story starts, for all my, as far back as I can remember, I've really longed for a sense of connection,
Mm.
connection to myself and connection to other people, and not really understood what that connection, what that really meant, like why it felt like it was missing. Was there something wrong with me? Was there something wrong with the world?
Mm.
I don't know. So from quite an early age, I went, I've been a searcher. Firstly, in things like, mythical tales, like fairy tales and legends and myths, and being fascinated by the American Indians and the Aborigines, as well as the ancient Greeks and
Yeah.
the Brothers Grimm and all of those sorts of things, and just loving those stories. Something felt like they resonated deeply with me. But then on a much more personal thing of not just observing other people's stories, but also creating my own. So again, the martial arts that I've done, the adventures that I've been on, the things that I've learned about myself, that kind of inner journey as well as the journey out into the world. Those two things are like a reflection of each other. And then through all of that journeying, I started to connect to who I really am. I started to get a sense of who I am. And I'd realized that I'd been distant from that part of myself for so long that
Yeah.
I kind of didn't really know, I didn't know who I was or what I wanted or what I stood for, and I was taking other people's versions and adopting them as my own, as a kind of like a cover, as a
Yeah.
way, oh, David's really cool. He knows what he's talking about. And I kind of did, but it was kind of parroting what other people were saying.
Yeah.
So, so that journey of getting deep enough into myself so that I could stop parroting what other people were saying and start speaking really deeply and truly from the heart was when I did some amazing work with a wonderful mentor and teacher of mine called Ken Anderson, Father Ken Anderson. I met him when he was in his 80s, and he passed away earlier this year. But it was this man that pointed me to the kind of the source of all of that,
Okay.
which was having a very, very close relationship with my sister in a very turbulent period of our family history where our parents were divorcing and I was only a year old, but my sister was much older than me. She was like a mother figure to me in the early years of my life. But when I was 7, she decided to move to Israel. And the first awareness of that I had was seeing her suitcase by the front door
Yeah.
and her getting ready to be taken to the airport. So I was 7 years old and I completely lost the plot. And there was no one was emotionally available for me to be able to process all of that. It was as simple as that. And then from that day on, I kind of went into this kind of fantasy inner world where I shut myself away in a room and created this whole fantasy world for myself made out of Lego and Meccano and all these, different. I mean, I really created this kind of amazing world. And I would spend hours and hours and hours there of just living out this wonderful fantasy.
It was it a coping mechanism, would you say, David? That
Yeah,
bit of
I
it,
think
yeah, going into that world and perhaps not wanting to deal with the heartache, the break from your sister, perhaps. Would you
Yeah,
describe it as that? Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And yeah, just kind of nurturing myself, really, just trying to be really kind and gentle to myself without knowing it necessarily, but being kind and gentle to myself. And at the same time, not only was there this kind of physical withdrawal from the world into this fantasy, but also an emotional withdrawal. So
Yeah.
I got very quiet, I got very internal. And the thing that started to emerge was that I was losing a lot of physical strength and movement and control on the left side of my body. So this wonderful man that I met, Father Ken Anderson, he and I worked out that what might have happened that day was like I had a spiritual heart attack. So that
Yeah.
thing where someone has a heart attack and then they literally lose the use of their left arm. So something like that must have happened to me, and I don't know if that's true, but
Mhm.
it certainly the truth of it resonates because there was this sort of family story that I broke my collarbone when I was born because I was breech birth.
Yeah.
And so that breaking my right collarbone had some kind of impact on my left side, on my left shoulder.
Yeah.
No one really understood, but the kind of the timelines didn't really add up, and I was
Yeah.
always a little bit skeptical as to what that explanation might be. But this one really resonated.
And I think that's quite important in this work. It's very difficult to find the language sometimes to describe what's happened. And so I think it's whatever language is right for you, how to describe it. There isn't a right or wrong way about it.
N- No, I think you're absolutely right, and I think also, particularly for the young people in our lives, I think adults can get a little bit like we know the answer, and that the young kids don't know the answers, like they haven't had enough life experience or they
Yeah.
don't know enough or whatever. And I look back on my life and I think to myself, actually, I really knew some stuff, even as a young kid. Like like I couldn't put it into words, but I
Mhm.
knew some stuff, you know? And if I'd have listened to more of that, and if other people had listened to that more, my life might have turned out very different. I'm not saying that I'm very happy with the way my life has turned out. So, there's no regrets there, but, things might have been very different if people had listened.
That's really interesting, isn't it? It's when we have that knowing inside, would you say that people were dismissive of it, or it wasn't something that you expressed because you weren't comfortable with, or a mix of both?
Yeah, I think to begin with, it was maybe I wasn't expressing it very well because you're like 4, and but I think more of it is that people can be dismissive, but also people can feel uncomfortable. Like adults can be really uncomfortable with children's outbursts and children's way of communicating. It
Mhm.
makes them feel uncomfortable. They feel embarrassed. They don't know what to do. So the easiest thing to do is to find a way to just shut the kid up. And
Mm.
it often, in my experience, often that isn't the thing that is necessary. And I remember I have a stepson, and when he was about 7, me and his mum and we went camping in the New Forest, and he was given the opportunity he was given some pocket money, and we went to this place, and he was in the shop, and he had an opportunity to either buy something for himself or to buy something for his grandparents.
Mm.
He didn't have enough money for both, so he had to choose, and he chose the thing for himself. And he played with it and he loved it and it was all great. But later on that day, he suddenly had a moment of doubt and a moment of remorse of, I got a thing for myself and I didn't get a thing for nanny and granddad. Oh, and I'm a terrible person. And he really, really cried, and he had no way of being able to control this thing.
Mm.
And his mum was wonderful with him because she cuddled him and she said it was going to be okay, and she just let him talk and all of that. And me, as at the time, an emotionally unaware and unintelligent man, I just was like, why is he going on? And we just have to go back the next day. I was just so uncompassionate, so unsympathetic towards this young boy. It makes me shudder just to think about it. But it's that thing of giving kids the space to be able to express themselves,
Yeah.
and also then teach them the age appropriate skills to be able to regulate themselves as well, right? So it's not just
Yeah.
bridled expression, but how do I manage myself in amongst all of that as well?
So, when your mentor was working with you and you said he supported you to connect to the source,
Mm.
was that talking? What did that look like?
So with him, it was talking predominantly, but there was also a lot of forgiveness work that it's like he set me homework, and he would send me off to have conversations with my parents, with my siblings, with other members of my family, to help me create a context for what their lives were like, um, at various points, what their childhoods were like, how those childhoods had formed them, why it drove them to do the things that they did and the things that they didn't do. And it was just the most wonderfully healing process for me over maybe like 3 or 4 years, where I could have these multiple conversations and really come to an understanding of why my parents and my siblings did the things that they did and why they didn't do the things that they did. So that rather than be really angry at them for doing this
Yeah.
stuff that made my life unbearable for me, I had an understanding of why they did that, and it just began to soften the anger.
Yeah.
And I felt a lot of that anger that was getting in the way of my connection with them.
Yeah.
It softened that, and it allowed me to really be with them and understand them. And, my dad's going to be 96 at the end of the month,
Yeah.
and, it's going to be okay when he passes. There's nothing left that's unsaid.
So, through that work, that kind of anger, able to work through, to understand, to see and hear them kind of how they were,
Mm,
and then the anger was transmuted into compassion.
totally. Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think a lot, yeah, and I think a lot of the anger, sometimes anger can be, it's justified in the sense that somebody has wronged you, but also a, a lot of that anger, I think, can be, like you say, transmuted when we have a real understanding of somebody. Yeah.
It's quite a loaded question, but often when you do that kind of inner work, when you start to look at things more closely and you pick them apart, could you see yourself in them? Could you see parts of you in them and vice versa?
I think I could see why they did what they did. And it allowed me to see that if I had been in their situation, I would have done exactly the same.
And
And I know that there are expressions like, if you had lived the life that someone had lived, and and all of that, then you would be exactly where they are. And
yeah,
like I kind of know that intellectually, but actually having had that experience with them, like I really felt that I understood that on a very, deep
mhm,
level. And so it's really hard, or I found it really hard to continue being angry with them, because it's like, well, I'd have done that, you know.
And I think when you're in that place, forgiveness becomes easier.
Yep, forgiveness becomes much easier. And I also think not just forgiveness for them, but also forgiveness for myself, which is just this endless, ongoing process of forgiving myself for all the the judgments and the thoughts and the ideas that I've had about myself that I've taken on board and that I've lived by. But I think for me, like people say, you got to forgive yourself first and then you can forgive other people. But it kind of felt like it was the other way around for me, you know,
Yeah.
in kind of finding a way to be able to forgive my parents and siblings for some of what had happened. It allowed me to go, okay, right, I can let all of that go. And now I
Mm.
know that what's left is mine.
Yeah.
And if it's mine, then I can choose to hold on to it, choose to let it go. But it's mine to do that.
What did David look like disconnected? Or what did that look like for you?
What a great question. Well, I had wild hair that was, but aside from that, I, I, okay, so I'm from a Jewish background, and 13 boys have a ceremony called a bar mitzvah, which is this sort of
Yeah.
traditional transition into taking on the male responsibilities of the Jewish faith. And there's a picture of me on the day of my bar mitzvah, and I saw this picture recently. So this is 40 years ago that this happened. But I'm looking straight at the camera, and I'm looking at this picture, and I'm looking into my own eyes of my 13-year-old self, and the the message that comes back from my eyes is, have I done enough now to make you happy?
Ah.
Is this enough? Is
Mhm.
this enough? Is this what you need of me?
Mhm.
Like it's a desperate plea for, right, now can I get on with the rest of my life, please?
Ah.
You know? And I would say that that would be the overall thing of what I look like through a lot of my life. It's like, have I done enough to please you? Have I done enough to make you like me? Am I good enough in your eyes? Will you accept me? And it was really tiring and really stressful to live life like that, because what one person wanted, or what I thought one person wanted, might well be the opposite of what a completely different person wanted. So how could I please them both? The only way that I could ever do that was just to be consistently disloyal to who I really am
Yeah.
and not really even know who I am.
Mm.
So I kind of walk through life very, a little bit like a drunk, really, kind of just staggering to the right and staggering to the left, just trying to find my way forward. And then there were moments when I had real clarity, and I was very, like, so for example, moving to Cambridge and working at the British Antarctic Survey, because I had a passion for the wilderness and wildlife and the Antarctic and all of those things. And I was very, very focused and very, very clear that that's what I wanted. And nothing would have diverted me from, going to that particular area of my life. And then another part of that was also, the martial arts that I started doing at a similar sort of time. So there were some areas where I had crystal clear clarity about things, and nothing, like, it didn't matter if what I did upset other people.
Yeah.
But then there were vast majority of the time, there was this sense of, okay, what can I do to make sure that you love me? What can I do to make sure that, that I'm acceptable? And I kind of flip flop between the two, but predominantly it was in the
Yeah.
people pleasing area.
I'm nearly crying.
Bless you.
It's yeah. It's it's so emotional to hear men and women talk in this way,
Mm,
because I think, I don't know what your experiences are, but a lot of this work is hidden.
mm,
We don't show it, do we, while we're going through it, because there's something deep and quite sacred about it, really. Something that belongs to us. But I think it's going to really help people to be able to share these stories. I think.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to share it when you're going through it because it's so raw
Yeah.
and it can often be very painful,
Mm.
very intimate. And it's like while you're going through the process of reconnecting with yourself, you know, it's very different to talk about it as you're going through it compared to being really connected to yourself and kind of and looking back and going, okay, this is the journey that I went through, and I can kind of talk about it almost
Yeah.
like from a distance.
And it,
But yeah, I think it is really important, and as best as people can, to talk openly about what they are going through. That kind of feels like self development
mm,
4.0 or something like that. Like that's quite super duper sexy self development work to be able to talk about the process as you're doing it.
yeah.
But that bit's important, right? Because you need to be able to track yourself in your interactions with people and be able to, even just for yourself in real time, be able to go, yeah, I'm feeling angry now. I'm withdrawing now. And I'm kind of
Yeah.
playing that game of leaning in or leaning back, and then coming back to center so that you're grounded and that you are centered, even though you might be feeling those emotions on the periphery, that they
Yeah.
don't throw you off balance. They don't throw you off center so that you become reactive.
Yeah, that's really important. So when you were working with your mentor,
Mm.
was it then that you got this feeling back? You started to get the movement back in the shoulder, or was that a little bit further on? Was that a little bit further on? When did that movement start to come back?
Yeah, so the movement, like I've always had movement, but quite restricted movement. And as part of our conversations, he introduced me to a guy who was like a hands-on therapist in a method referred to as rolfing.
Okay.
And then later on, I discovered this a different process called the Feldenkrais method,
Yeah.
which is the thing that I did tell you about.
Yeah.
Now, rolfing is a wonderful thing, and I don't know all that much about it, other than I can vouch for how excruciatingly painful it is
Oh, really?
when some like why it has to be that painful, I don't know, but it certainly moved a lot of things, and there was a lot of crying and a lot of emotion, and some of it was the physical pain of him digging his fingers in, but mostly it was emotional pain and releasing a lot of just the the sadness and the anger and the like, how could you leave me behind, all of that emotion that was stored in my body, that was beginning to become released. But then the Feldenkrais method, which is a much softer, much softer, like my body definitely prefers it, but that is more of a almost like a nervous system
Yeah.
reorganization,
Yeah.
where you're allowing the muscles to release their unnecessary tension. And there can be a lot of emotion with it, and there can be a lot of um, catharsis that comes with it. But that, more than anything, has really helped me to gain a lot of full range of movement and strength and control in the whole of my body. Because, of course, if you lose movement in, say, like your left arm, it actually impacts the whole of you. It doesn't
Mm.
just impact your left arm, right? So the whole of your body has to find ways of rebalancing and making up for this lack of movement. So your whole body starts to change its shape to accommodate
Yeah.
that. So what the Feldenkrais method does is it works on the whole of you, which is one of the
Yeah.
reasons why I love it so much. And so it takes time, but I'm definitely on this on the definitely on the road of full of fullness with that,
Yeah.
and whether I get full movement and full control of my left arm, in a way, it doesn't matter. But what's really clear to me is that emotionally, I'm clear of all of that stuff that was holding me back.
And so coming back to present day,
Mm,
looking at how you were in those younger years, that young boy at the bar mitzvah,
mm.
how does that compare today? So how What's connected David look like?
What does connected David look like? Ta-da! He looks. I used to be really attentive to people's moods because as a young man, because I was trying to check out, am I safe? Am I okay to be myself here? What do I need to do to make sure that this person likes me or cares for me or is kind to me?
Yeah.
So that was what disconnected David looks like. What connected David looks like is I'm still using those same skills, but but it's much more about me listening to them to really harbor connection where we both can lean into each other, you know? So they can lean in 100%, I can lean in 100%, and we get this real kind of strong connection and strong relationship building where we're both leaning on each other to be able to co-create something, be that a conversation or a piece of work or whatever or an event or a moment. So there's this real kind of beautiful vulnerability. So there's a willingness to be vulnerable within myself. Also aware that because of that, I can also hold space for someone else to be vulnerable too. So I never wanted to be a therapist, but definitely I'm definitely a coach. That is my way of making my way in the world financially. And I love that opportunity to be able to use that ability, my own vulnerability, but also being able to hold space for other people to be vulnerable too. And then an extension of that, of course, is that in my relationships outside of work, I'm not really doing anything different, like I'm probably more open about myself in my non-professional relationships, of course, because you want to kind of keep that professional boundary. But in essence, it feels like a very, 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 very similar thing where we're leaning into each other, and it allows us to be really real and raw and honest and open with each other. So I love walking through the world being that way and being able to invite people to do the same.
And do you feel more confident in that intuitive knowing that you had as a young boy? Have you learnt to be confident with that, do you think?
Yeah, yeah. And more as time goes on, like the little nudges of my intuition, either in my head or in my body. I- I've done a lot of embodiment work, so I'm also very mindful of the ways in which my body speaks to me and nudges me to do things. I think I kind of look back at my younger self. Somebody asked me this question in another podcast interview. They said, what advice would you give your younger self? And my answer was that I would actually now just sit and listen. I wouldn't give my younger self any advice at all,
Yeah,
but I would be that one person that would sit and listen because no one else really sat and listened and understood him.
mm,
But if somebody had done that again, I think it would have made a phenomenal difference. And of course, I did meet someone like that. Ken was much later on in my life, but my martial arts teacher was another person that I met as a teenager who was wonderful for, he clearly saw me very different to the way that I saw myself. And he could
okay.
see that I had potential that I couldn't see. He had this wonderful way of being able to have you know that what he was asking you to do, he was asking you to do it because he knew you could. And
Mm,
it was your job to get out of your way so that you could do it. And it was the martial arts way, and it's quite a harsh way. And I love that about the old martial arts. It's old school, and I'm not sure whether it necessarily works
mm,
anymore in that way, but it was life changing for me because it
yeah,
allowed me to have male role models that allowed me to, again, connect in with my own masculinity and feel a sense of pride and value in being a man that I hadn't really
Yeah.
felt until that point.
Do you see this journey as a healing on the physical, mental, emotional, and heart level?
Yes.
Is that how you describe it? And do you describe it as a journey from feeling disconnected to connection?
Oh, it's definitely, well, it's been a journey from connection to disconnection to connection. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. My belief is that, we're all born connected, and then all of that life stuff happens, where we get disconnected.
Yes.
Then the rest of it is about finding your way home.
Yeah, very much so.
Mm.
I suppose I'm not going to ask you about what would you tell your younger self, but because
Go on. No.
yeah, but I suppose what advice would you give to people out there that perhaps hearing resonance with your story?
But first and foremost, if you are listening to this podcast, then you are a good person. That there's nothing wrong, there's nothing to fix, there's nothing missing, that you are whole. And at the same time, we can get into these kind of funky habits and patterns where we listen to negativity out there in the world, or we listen to the negativity in our heads, and it disconnects us from the goodness and the wholeness and the fullness of who we are. So be aware of that. And so it's not wrong that you listen to those voices, but that the practice is to notice that you're listening to those voices and be kind to yourself and be loving and patient and compassionate with yourself. And as quickly as you can, shift your focus over to the love and the fullness and the compassion of who you really are.
That's really lovely. I feel so grateful that you have shared your story in this way, and I think people will benefit from hearing it. I don't just think women, but I think young men as well. I think life is quite tough out there at the moment for people, and perhaps haven't got information that they need. But going back to what you were saying right at the beginning, it's people's stories where we find resonance and connection, and perhaps the ideas to find support or reach out and ask. So thank you very much. I'm really, really grateful. I know it's very vulnerable and raw, but I'm really, really pleased that you're able to share your story in this way. So thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for the opportunity. And always really happy to share. And if there are people, who are kind of feeling that sense of, I feel disconnected, the kind of the core of my work is about getting that connection back. So if anyone is curious or wants support in any of that, then, I'm really, really happy to speak to anybody who's struggling with that and would want some support or guidance or anything. So yeah, very happy to help in whatever way I can.
Where can people find your work?
So, so I have a business partner, and she and we have work together that we refer to as the Institute of Sovereign Leadership. So we have a Facebook group called the Institute of Sovereign Leadership. So I can give you the link for that. And in there, we post things about some of the events that we're doing. So one of the kind of the common sessions that we run are hour-long sessions where we do some mindfulness and some embodiment. I mean, we give people that opportunity to connect to that inner wisdom, yeah, that inner sovereign, the sovereign within, which is why the name is what it is. And it's just a really beautiful community and a really beautiful space to have people connect and feel safe and able to explore and stuff like that. And those sessions are free or by donation. So again,
Yeah.
very welcome for people to join those. And then my website is Potentiality Coaching. So potential ITY and then coaching. So potentialitycoaching.co.uk. And there's lots of stuff on there and ways to reach out and connect to me as well on that website too.
Thank you. We'll put those details in the show notes. But thank you, David. Thank you for coming to talk to me on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. It's been a lot of fun.
For more information on David's work, please visit the show notes. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of The Connection Compass. If you think it will help someone else, please leave a review. And if you have any questions, please visit me at andrealevans.com Facebook page. And remember to keep talking, keep connecting for a more interconnected world.